we all love this, like, I'm a lonely wolf kind of journey. It doesn't happen. In reality, you need a village to build a business.
Daria, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's great. We've been playing phone tag for a while, so I'm happy that we finally get to sit down and chat.
I mean, I feel like it's a life of a typical entrepreneur. You do have to pivot around your schedule and you do have to be flexible and adaptable. Otherwise, things are not going to go great. So it's just matter for you and I. It just speaks very highly how adaptable of entrepreneur we are. So, good for us.
Totally. And I would love for you to start sort of at the beginning of your journey. Like, how did you get into starting your company? How did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
Oh, absolutely. So I moved to Canada. I'm originally from Russia, but I moved to Canada right after graduating high school. So I was about 18 when I just moved to Canada. And this whole idea of getting like a full-time job right after I graduate, it was like, okay, that's cool. I understand that I need to do it to get the documents and to kind of wrap up my whole immigration process. But I was like, this honestly feels like a freaking scam. Like, for example, it takes me 3 days to fly back home. Just because with the layovers and everything. And I remember asking my 9 to 5 manager that I need to go home because there was like a family thing. And I only had 2 weeks for my entire work year for everything that I've done for the company. And she's like, okay, you have 2 weeks to go. And so it took me a week to fly from Vancouver, Canada to Russia. And I was there for a week. And so I was flying back. I was like, okay, so this is ridiculous. There is no way in a universe where I would be spending the next 45 years, just 2 weeks on my vacation just to go see my family, just to go see my parents, my relatives, and not see the world, not do any fun stuff with my friends, with my husband, because, okay, so this is ridiculous. Yeah. And I was trying to figure out what would be the plan for me if I were to move outside of a 9 to 5. And I kind of started with consulting, like playing with like a super small clients here and there where I could. But I'm super grateful for the company where I worked as a 9 to 5 because it taught me like so many great skills. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, we do tend to like downplay the importance of a full-time job, but the amount of stability, skill sets, and networking opportunities that a full-time job can get you, it's honestly insane. So for anyone listening, for all our aspiring entrepreneurs, the fact that you have a 9 to 5 job, it's great. Use it. Use it at your own advantage. Use it as your stepping stone. You don't need to go all in at your business right from the start, the moment that you turn 18, or otherwise you're a complete failure. Because honestly, I feel like we got sold on this idea that this is a definition of success. But I know so many entrepreneurs who are doing really, really great and who build incredible businesses all over the world, and they have a 9 to 5 job and they love it. And they're don't even plan to quit because like, hey, it's still a part of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That was like, I relate a lot to that. Like, I learned that lesson when I moved to San Francisco from China. I was like trying to find a 9 to 5. It just wasn't working. And I was like, oh, maybe this is a sign that like I should start a company and like work, for myself. And so I started doing like kind of freelance. Like I was, listen, at the end of the day, like you still have to pay your bills. And so I was starting the podcast, and that success is not going to happen overnight. And so I was doing freelance to pay the bills, and freelance is so hard. And it really did make me super grateful for a full-time job. And then when I got my current full-time job, it was fantastic because, to your point, I've been able to learn so much here that I know is going to be super applicable for the day that my company does become my full-time job. Like there's just so much that I'm learning in this space, and like without this opportunity, and frankly also without the financial freedom that this job offers me, there's no way that I would be able to pursue my entrepreneurial ventures with the same degree of vigor. Like I think that truly, like if I were to give advice to other aspiring entrepreneurs, it would be to start it while you're working a 9 to 5, because you don't want like that desperate energy pressure forcing you to have to make bad decisions just because you're like fully desperate because you just don't have money. And it is true, like you do learn a lot of valuable skills through your corporate jobs. And I think the networking is key. Like something that you said earlier struck a chord with me. Entrepreneurialism, I'm learning, is like a lot about community. It's a lot about talking to other people, telling them about what you do, learning about what they do, sort of like sharing that experience, and without being able to leverage either other people's expertise or experience, like it's so much harder to be an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah, 100%. I like, we all love this, like, I'm a lonely wolf kind of journey, and I'm gonna go and win every single dragon out there and do everything by myself. I don't
Yeah.
need anyone. But in reality, it doesn't happen. In reality, you need a village to build a business. In reality, there are a lot of moving components that you need to have implemented in order for you to have a successful business. And networking opportunities, and just like networking community in general, is one of the greatest opportunities and one of the best things that your 9 to 5 jobs, that your communities that you were born to, that you grew up in, that all of the opportunities, you need to learn how to take it in. Because if you can't just be starting from zero and do it all by yourself. Especially, I feel like there is also a point when it comes to entrepreneurs, especially, when we are starting our business from scratch, and we are like, like working hard, all the hustle, all of this fluff. When it's happening, it's like we forget how to delegate, first of all, because it's always like, well, it's cheaper for us to do it by ourselves, or I don't trust anyone, it's easier for me to do stuff by myself. But when you rely on other people for support, you also allow space for opportunities to happen that you didn't know could have happened.
Yeah.
You kind of like let go of this control. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Did that happen to you?
Oh, you're kidding me so many times. I've got help from the places I never expected in the whole world. I got support from the places where I was for 100% sure I wouldn't get support. When I was leaving my 9 to 5, they offered me a contract job. Like they offered me, it's like, hey, I know we will be hiring for somebody to replace you, but it's going to take a while because like you did a lot.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a contract with us for the next 2 months? So my transition from a 9 to 5 into this whole business owner entrepreneurship journey was very much thanks to the 9 to 5 that I kind of transitioned from.
Well,
and that allowed me to build connections with other places that later they hired me as a consultant. And listen, I have kind of like 2 avenues into my business. I mean, I now primarily focus on one. I had a consulting business and a coaching business. With my consulting business, I was primarily working with like businesses, and I was helping them like grow their influencer marketing partnerships and manage social relationships. And then I have a coaching business for content creators or service providers who want to build a personal brand on the social media. My heart super heavily lies into my coaching business, but my consulting business pays the bills. And for a year and a half, I was working with one client, and that one client hired me for 40 hours a week. So it was like a 9 to 5 job. And I did treat it like a 9 to 5 job because my hours were like super set. It was like somewhere around like 7 to 3 p.m. I had like back-to-back calls. It was like very much a 9 to 5 job. And I feel like another thing that I kind of didn't expect that there will be opportunities for you to transition back into 9 to 5 job, just in a ways that you probably didn't expect, or in a form that you didn't know was possible, simply because you might get too busy, where you're kind of expected to go back to this kind of like a 9 to 5 routine, simply because it's an only way for you to manage. Or another way that I've seen for so many service providers, for so many entrepreneurs, where they're transitioning into beyond 40 hours a week. And they're like, yeah, you know what? I'm really missing my 9 to 5. That 2 weeks vacation a year, it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is like, I think that it's funny sometimes that, I mean, this kind of goes back to something I always say is like, entrepreneurialism is not for everybody. It's a really hard job. And if you are leaving your 9 to 5 because you're unfulfilled or like you're just frustrated with that company, being an entrepreneur is not going to be the solution for you. But if you're passionate about something and you want to build something, like that's the entrepreneurs, like that spirit, I think will carry you through. But to your point, I know so many founders out there who work crazy, crazy hours. Like all they do is work. And like, I follow this one girl on Instagram. She's also like a content creator, but she's a tech platform founder. And she was on vacation a while ago in Sweden with like a group of her girlfriends. And she was like, well, I'm jet lagged anyway. I literally can't sleep. She posted a story at, it was like 4 a.m. their time. And she was like, well, might as well get some work done while I'm up and at 'em. Like, you know, if for her, like it doesn't stop. Like the hours are crazy. She's literally on vacation and she's still working. And like, I just think that people don't really necessarily understand how much it is to build a business, especially if you're doing it by yourself.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I couldn't agree more with you. And like the thing that you said that business ownership and entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Oh my God. I would not recommend entrepreneurship for 99% of human beings. Like seriously, the amount of stuff that I have to do and I have to overcome on like a daily basis and the amount of failures that I need every single day, it's ridiculous. It's like,
Yep.
I remember what it was like a couple of years ago. That was fun. I had like my day stopped at 4. I had hobbies. I did a bunch of fun stuff. It's not like I don't do a bunch of fun stuff anymore, but it was very different. Like the mental load is still there. I might go and do some fun stuff, but I will still think about work.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I will still think about this like, okay, so I have this launch happening in a couple of weeks and then I have this thing and then I have that thing. How we can maximize it? How can we scale it? How we can optimize it? And your brain just never turns off because you kind of trained it not to be off. You trained it to be on all the time. Like all my best ideas come when I am in the shower, when I'm drinking coffee on a balcony. I was like, oh my God, how about I do this? And it's like, it's not supposed to be my working hours. And I remember when I was very much enjoying my 9 to 5 life, I never had an idea like that. You know, when I was showering, girl, I was showering. Like I was enjoying my hot water, my hot steam, you know, the shampooing and stuff. I wasn't thinking about how can I maximize a business for this person, because it's not my business. I'm a 9 to 5. I'm paid to work for 40 hours a week and that's it.
Yeah.
So the amount of mental load that needs to happen for you to go from a 9 to 5 to entrepreneur, it's also something that I don't see much. But again, yeah, I wouldn't recommend entrepreneurship for majority of people.
Truly. And I think for you too, it was a good transition because like you still had the relative stability of your 9 to 5 while you were building your business. Wait, I should also ask, like, did you put in your 2 weeks once you had the business like up and running, or were you like, I'm ready to start this business and I'm going to quit and start it?
It was kind of conversation between a CEO and I, and we just like sat down, like she knew what I was doing and she was kind of like, we kind of agreed that that would be a good time for me to go, but we decided on a 1 month's notice. And then I was consulting them for another 2 or 3 months. So it was like a pretty good transition time.
Yeah.
Like I'm super grateful for them. But it was definitely like I started building my business, like full on building business, like a couple of months before that happened. And I started seeing some traction, but I was making around 70% of my monthly income, which it wasn't like too bad, but you know, when you're in your 20s, like you want to enjoy life, right?
Yeah.
You want to enjoy things that are not just covering rent and eating instant noodles. And
truly.
So it was definitely like a weird, like financially, it was like a weird transition, but like I did have quite a good support in place. I have a husband and he was like super helpful throughout this time. And for like any entrepreneurs who are transitioning from this journey, from like 9 to 5 to a full-time job, like I would say like have a plan. Like what if it's not gonna work out? Like we of course we love to think about like manifestation and you know all of this beautiful things just gonna come and flow with you, which are great, but realistically, like rationally, can we have a plan in place? in case it's not gonna work out. And what does this plan look like? For me, the plan looked like if nothing is gonna happen for so I had this conversation in April, and for me it was like if nothing's gonna happen by November, I'm gonna be starting and looking for a new job. And like that was the plan in place. And it's kinda, I don't want to say like it put some pressure to it, but it's kind of like I knew that I just have like this 6 months to try and see how I'm gonna like it. It was kind of like liberating, if I'm being honest, because it was like I have this playground for 6 months. I can do whatever the heck I want. There is so many opportunities. I can just play and see, and like let's try. Like the worst thing, I will go back and do some and do like go to an agency, go to in-house, whatever it's gonna look like, but like let me just try. And I'm so glad that I did, and I'm so glad that we had this plan in place for me to be like not to feel like obligated or super pressured in terms of like, okay, I need to die, but I need to make money this month. It was like we have the deadline, I'm fine, so let's just go to this networking event and see how it's going to turn out.
Yeah. So when that happened, how did you take the business from like relatively like functioning, 70% of your income to 100% of your income? Like what were your strategies for that?
So honestly, that's a weird, so I'm going to be sharing numbers because but if you go to my page, I'm super transparent about numbers. So in April 2022, I was making around, if I remember correctly, like 3,500 for my 9-to-5 job, and like my consulting business was bringing somewhere around like 2,000 up to 3,000. I think it was like the maximum numbers that I got. So when I left my 9-to-5, business transitioning, that kind of like period felt a little bit weird because it was also summertime, and what I didn't realize back then, which I only happen to realize right now, summer is my slow season, and my business will be up and running from like September to May. June, July, especially August is a dead season for me. I should just take a step back and chill and relax, which for June, I realized that I was super burnt out. So I kind of took a couple of weeks and, try to just get my strength back up and running. And for July, I started rebuilding connections. I took my Instagram super seriously, which I'm super grateful for. Honestly, building a personal brand on Instagram is and was to this day the biggest investments that I've ever done into my life and in my business, and the opportunities that my own social media brought me is freaking insane. And somebody who followed me on Instagram had this connection to another person who had a connection to another person, and that person decided to reach out to me for an introduction because they have a company and they needed someone to run their influencer marketing department. So they reached out to me. They paid me $25,000 a month. So I went from very, very quickly to getting to making $3,000 to $25K a month in 4 months. And I was working with them for a year and a half.
What?
So yeah, just up until this April. There was some restructuring, so we decided to part ways. And so now I'm focused very insanely with my coaching business. And of course, that cash flow was absolutely insane. And it's not a typical story that you would hear. It's the minute you're gonna leave your 9-to-5 job, you're gonna find a client who's gonna pay you shit tons of money, because that's not the case. But the takeaway here, I feel, it's talk about your freaking business on Instagram. Talk about what you do and talk about your services, because if you don't feel like there are people and opportunities available with your first-hand connections, you don't know who that first-hand connection knows, and they might do an intro, and that might be a crazy opportunity for you.
Yeah. Tell me about your personal branding experience, how you did that on Instagram, because it's something I'm always trying to improve on. How did you, what were your first Instagrams look like? How did you evolve the process?
Oh, my first Instagram reels and stories, they look absolutely horrible, but I'm so grateful for Daria in 2022 who posted those horrific reels, because it was a skill. Yeah. And like right now, my entire business is built on that. I help people build a personal brand online. Like this is primarily what I do now. And I feel like one of the biggest things is when people are trying to build a personal brand is they start comparing themselves to the person that they look up to a lot. And that person has been doing it for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's such a soul draining experience, because you're like, well, I'm gonna put up this reel, and then this reel looks honestly freaking horrible, and then you compare yourself to somebody who just put up a reel and they have a team, a videographer, of a content creator who did like this whole thing, and you're like, okay, well, I clearly suck, so there is no point for me to do anything, because like, what's the point? And for me, when I just started, I went through like such a love-hate relationship in Instagram. I love Instagram now. I feel like it's the best platform in the world. And I'm so grateful for all the opportunities. But the first 6 months, I like genuinely hated Instagram. I felt like everybody had the keys and everybody figured out the secret to success, and I didn't. And everybody knows what they're doing, and I didn't. And it was like, how did you figure out your strategy? Like, what? Like, did some strategy fairy godmother just came to you and like handed you like an Instagram strategy? Like, what's happening here, people?
That's how it feels. Yes,
it does feels like that all the time, of course. And it's so weird, and so you just feel so left out all the time. And this process of picking this habit and posting and showing up, it's honestly a super weird habit, because I feel like as humans, we are not really designed to be talking about our life to such a big amount of people at all times. But with how Instagram works and how just storytelling works, you kind of have to. But it's weird. It's like, am I oversharing here? Who is even gonna care what I'm gonna say right now? Like, what is even the point of this conversation? This is stupid. I'm stupid. You know, like our imposter syndrome loves hating on us when we are posting anything on social. And it's also, I feel like it's very easy to start attaching ourselves to the results of the specific number of what we're doing, like a number of followers that we have, or a number of likes that we got, or a number of comments that we got, because it's like, that's what our imposter syndrome is feeding on. That's the whole thing that is doing.
Yeah, totally. It's like, if it's not performing well, that's sort of like the proof your insecurity needed to say like, oh, see, I was right. So how did you overcome that?
I just posted. Honestly, the first 3 months that I posted Instagram, I just wanted, like, every time I would hit post, I just wanted to hid underneath my bed and don't do anything, don't talk to anyone. And if like one of my friends would bring out my own Instagram, I'd be like, just shut up. Like, don't. We're not gonna talk about it. It doesn't exist. Like, let's just move on. Because I was so embarrassed of what I was doing. It's like, you know, just like small little things that I do. But what I kept telling myself, it's going to be a really, really great story in a couple of years once it's going to be a valuable business. That's the stories that's like literally the stories that I was telling myself. This is a good point A. Daria, you know what? This sucks, but in 6 months, it's going to be a really good point A. I was like, okay, so we're just going to do it for the plot. We're just going to do it for the point A perspective. And it was so hard. And by the time around like 2 months rolling of you consistently posting and showing up, you're like, okay, well, that's kind of the gig now. Like, this is what I do. After 2 years of consistent posting, you're like, yeah, that's my Instagram. And whenever your friends bring it up, you're like, yeah, continue. Feel free to talk it up. Because it's like, it becomes such a big part of your own personal brand and your own brand positioning. That's like, it becomes part of your job. Like, speaking of like entrepreneurs building their own 9 to 5, Instagram is on my to-do list every single day. There is not a day, Monday to Friday, goes by where I don't have something to do on Instagram. Because it's my job. It's something that brings me leads. It's something that brings me clients, brings me students, brings me opportunities. So it's a very big part of my job, and I treat it as such. I don't treat it as like, oh, just like a small thing that I do on the side, and I'm gonna die of embarrassment if I'm gonna share something there. But it's actually like, it's my job, it's my business, it's a very big part of my business, and I'm gonna treat it as such, no matter how cringe I feel about it.
Yeah. What kind of posts were you posting? Because like, this is something that I'm always thinking about. Like, what are some examples of like stuff that you talk about to educate people on your business? Are you like, hey, I'm Daria, this is what I do, like, I could be helpful here? Or like, do you do something more like, do you start with a specific hook? Like, what does it look like, especially in the beginning?
I feel like, I love the question, Matt, absolutely, because I feel like we get so stuck up on like, what is the right way for us to introduce it, and what is there, how do we tell the story to wow all the people that already follow us. But the biggest thing that you need to it's like, let's say it's your very first post that you're telling people about your business. It's, you literally need to start and claim and post like you're posting not necessarily for the people who follow you already, but for the people that you want to follow you. Like, if you're creating a reel starting from a position, and it's kind of like you're in your season 5 of your life, and you kind of need to recap what happened before in previous seasons, right? Because think about this way, Instagram, it's kind of like we all have our own TV shows where you're the main character, and it's kind of be like scrolling through Netflix and trying to decide which TV shows or which movie to pick. At the evening, Instagram is exactly like this, where you are the main character. But if somebody lands on your Instagram and they have no idea who you are, what you look like, what you do, what's currently happening in your life, what are your passions, like kind of like what's important to you in the moment, they're gonna leave and go somewhere else because there is no story.
Right.
So let's say like you're just posting your very first post, I would definitely say post it like you're recapping what happened before in your previous seasons, and treat yourself. It's kind of like you know, have you played like Sims? Yeah. So I love this game. Oh my god, growing up I was obsessed with it. It's kind of like we are creating this like Sims persona. It's like, okay, so now we are choosing the outfit, and now we are choosing like, oh, you're gonna be the pastry chef, and this is gonna be the whole gig now. Very similar how it works with Instagram, where you are creating this idea of yourself online. And you're communicating this idea, because there are like a bunch of stuff that we want people to know about us, but there is also a bunch of stuff that you don't want people to know about us. Right? Like, for example, this morning I was like cleaning up so much puppy puke, it was ridiculous. My Instagram community doesn't need to know about it, because it's like, it was very humbling experience, of course. Because
also, of course, it's also like now what they come to you for, like that's not the kind of content that you're sharing. Like that's not if they're coming to you, they're not coming to you for like puppy content necessarily. Like
Exactly. And that's like the idea behind building a profitable niche, because like whenever people come to me and they'll always say like, oh, I have so many passions, I have so many interests in life, there's like so much stuff that I love talking about. And like, listen, I do too. I have so many hobbies. I love yoga. I just started high heel dancing. I like traveling with my husband. I love like learning self-development, building fruitful relationship with my family, like meditation, all of this stuff. I have like lots of passion and interest, but none of the stuff that I just listed is going to bring me money. Right?
Yeah.
And it's not really how I want people to know. It's not really something that I want people to know about me, or to think about like when the minute they hear about my name, or the minute that they see my own social media, or when they see me. I don't want them to think about, oh, Daria does meditation and she's been married for 10 years. I'm like, yeah, no. If I was doing like meditation for married people, then sure. But I'm building a personal brand.
Yeah.
So I want for people, the minute that they think about, oh, I want to take my Instagram seriously, I want them to think about me. And this is like for me to be creating what kind of key messaging that I can communicate to my community now. So whenever they have this idea, I will be the first person to pop in the head. That's it. And whatever I am communicating online, reels, posts, carousel stories, it's all in support of this message.
Yep.
That I want them to think about me. I want them to think about I want them to get inspired to take their Instagram seriously. I want them to feel motivated. And, okay, like now it's the time. Instagram is a great space. Like it's gonna bring me so many opportunities. There is like so much stuff that I can do. Let's do it. And like this is my whole thing, like to motivate and inspire and for people to get excited about building their own personal brand on social media. And the minute when they decide to do so, I want them to come to me for help.
Yeah.
And again, there are a bunch of stuff that I could potentially be talking about. Like for the longest time, I thought that my niche should be immigration because I immigrated from Russia to Canada,
Right.
and I got like a PR, I got a passport, I got everything. And like for the longest time, I thought that like this should be my niche. It's not. Thanks God, I'm very happy that I didn't do it because like the thing that's probably happening in your life right now, it's great, but if you're looking into your personal brand and into your goals, let's say like in a year from now, in 5 years from now, does it serve this goal? Yes or not? And typically what I've seen, the answer is no. And the answer is typically somewhere else, like, oh, I want for people to go to me whenever they think about like, I don't know, like makeup, photographer, like whatever. Then we need to tailor and position your business from that perspective of how you want to be known as, not really as how you're known right now or how, what is your biggest like expertise, let's say like right now. It's really a lot about like this future thinking and future perspective.
Yeah, this is actually making a lot of sense to me in a way that I haven't previously thought about it before. Like, what do I want to be known as? Like, I think about some of my favorite influencers and I can say, I know exactly why I'm going to their page and when. Like, if I'm looking for outfit inspiration, I know who to go to. If I'm looking for business help, I know exactly who to go to. Like, all of those things make sense. And I don't know why I never thought about it that way. Cause like, actually, maybe I do. I think maybe it was partially selfish where I was like, and it was very moment driven. I was like, this is what I'm into right now, or even more, this is what I think I want to be known for, and not necessarily who I am authentically. Like, I think the best example I can give is like, for so long, I thought I wanted to be like a fashion influencer. But that's not, now that I'm thinking about it that way, like, that's not what I want to be known for. Like, I don't want to be known. I don't want people to be like, oh, I have an outfit question. Like, I'm going to go to Maddie for that. Like, I just don't think that sustainably that's what I'm into. But like, am I a fashionable queen? Like, do I like to look cute? Like, yes.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. And like, I think the question then becomes like, how do you balance just sort of like, okay, actually, no, now I'm answering my own question. So my question was going to be like, how do I balance my personal life stuff with like my business stuff if it's a personal brand?
Quickly before I'm gonna answer this question, but like, so I also wanted to be a fashion influencer for like 2 years, at least 2 years. I was like, everybody was complimenting on my outfits when I go to school, and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna be a fashion influencer. The thing that sold me on this idea, not that I will share with people a bunch of outfits that I wear, but that I will be seen. And visible. And typically every second girl who wants to become a content creator that comes to me tells me I want to be a fashion influencer, and we always debunk it so deeply because there is always reason beneath that it's not that like most of the time it's nothing related to fashion. It's like I have this idea and I want to bring like mindfulness. I want to bring sustainability into this world. It's like, okay, girl, we're going to do that. We're not going to do the whole like fashion thing.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. We're getting so like really sold on this like super popular idea. But when we are trying to go into our own authenticity, there is a reason why we wanted it. For me, I realized the reason why I wanted to become like a fashion influencer, I wanted to have followers. I wanted to be influencer.
Yeah.
I wanted to build my own personal brand on Instagram. I didn't know what it was.
Yes.
2 people complimented me on my outfits in a month. Here in Vancouver, I was like, okay, fashion is gonna be my thing. I'm gonna be the fashion queen. And it's like, no. Not really, because my own authenticity and my own just like how I want to live my life lies very, 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 very far away from this fashion world. So I'm going to go there. But it's like whenever you're trying to build your personal brand on Instagram, the hardest part is reflection. And the hardest part is internal works that you need to do before you will start communicating it into external world, which is your own Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, whatever you want to build. Because we first need to get clarity within ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we need to get clarity for other people how we want to be perceived. That is the hardest part. And that I feel like it's like a forever changing, forever evolving process. Because the things that I learned about myself this month are going to like potentially going to be like, oh my God, I don't want to show this on my Instagram anymore, but I do want to show this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally. This is very, very interesting to me. I think this was something I had to go through myself where I was like, I remember before I moved to the US, I did like a complete sweep of my Instagram. I felt like I needed to get rid of who I thought I wanted to be and instead start showing up as like who I am and also who I want to be at the same time, but not the who I want to be that's driven by ego, but more like the who I want to be that's driven from the heart. And what I was posting about a year ago is like not, I guess, like very different from what I post about now, but it's like it's a constant refining process now, as opposed to before it was like me trying to throw spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck. And I think it's so fascinating that so many other women who know that they have the power to be influential and know that they have something to talk about. And they're like, I know that I want to have followers online, but we default to fashion. I think that's so, so interesting.
I feel like it's a very, I don't want to devalue the world of fashion influencer because, oh my God, I have so much respect for them. I did like
hard,
5 fashion reels and I died inside. But I feel like it's an easy gateway into the world of Instagram because it's the most visible one.
Yeah.
Whenever we go to social media, this is one of the very first things. I don't know like about how your algorithm works, but like for me, for sure, food and fashion, the very first 2 things that's gonna pop up.
Yeah, same.
But I would follow different people for different reasons, depending on their own authenticity, how they show up, and what's important for them and what's important for me.
Totally.
Right? And I feel like there is place for like literally everyone. And like whenever people say it's like, oh, my niche is oversaturated, all of this stuff, I call it such a big BS because your niche can never be oversaturated because there is only one you. There is only one you with your own set of values, with your own perspective, with how you show up and how you behave and how you perceive the world. So even if we're all magically going to become fashion influencers tomorrow, we all will have very, very different community, different audience, and different relationship with our audience, simply because we're all very different people. It's like whenever you're building friendships with humans, like out, in a normal world, in like offline world, you have different friendships, right? With different people. With like some, maybe it's more like about doing experiences together. With another, maybe it's like you see them once a month, but like every time it's like you go into depths together and it's like super deep conversation. Like we have different experiences with different people. It's exactly the same how it works with Instagram, where we are building this relationship with our community online, but like us, we're gonna have different relationship with different influencers, with different thought leaders, with different content creators, simply because of how they show up and how they taught us how to talk to them.
Yeah.
And what to think about them. That's it.
Yeah, totally. So I assume then that when you work with somebody who's like, okay, I really want to work on my personal brand, I assume that there's like a lot of questions that you're asking them to think deeply about themselves in order to like figure out how they either want to present themselves online or like what the content strategy needs to be and how you get there with them.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Like I do, this how I work is either a group coaching capacity or one-on-one capacity. I have the next cohort that's going to go live next Tuesday, and we kind of go as like a group of like 5, 10, 15 people, and we go through this experience together. And the first module, like it's a 12 weeks program, so 3 months. The very first module, all we do is like we dive very, very deep into the reflection, into the understanding, because if you're not gonna, and I had so many times where people like, okay, when are we gonna start posting stories? It's like, we will, but first we need to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
And how you want to show up. Because if I'll just tell you, okay, now it's time to post 75 reels, off you go, it's going to be the worst investment that you've ever made in your life.
Yeah, it's going to be like all over the place, disorganized.
Exactly. Like the whole idea is to first gain clarity within yourself and then communicate that clarity into the world. But I am very much, so I'm not a perfectionist, but I do work with all the perfectionists that I can find. Honestly, like all of my clients, all of my students, all perfectionists. I love them so much. But it's also kind of breaking up with your own perfectionist as you're building your own personal brand. And there are times when I'm like, okay, well, now it's time for you to tell this story, or like, this is an incredible story that you just told me. Can this is something that we can communicate online? And if the answer is yes, there's typically comes like, oh my god, but I don't know how to tell it. Like, what would be the best way? What would be the best lighting? And it's like exactly how you just shared the story with me. I need you to communicate it online as well. And that, like, it's in a nutshell, it's just us building a relationship with people online in a slightly bigger capacities than what we typically do. But it's hard, 100%. It's super hard and it's super awkward. But like, this experience is definitely worth it. And like this, like decoupling with your own perfectionism, with your own imposter syndrome, this is probably the hardest process that you have to do, and you have to go through at the very beginning of you taking your personal brand seriously.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, and if you'll take it with you, once you're going to be scaling it up, it's going to be way, way harder to do. And it's going to be way harder to break up with them, because they will be just so embedded with you.
Yeah.
And they will be just along with the journey, and we definitely don't want that.
Yeah, for sure. I think back to my own experiences, and I think the hardest part sometimes is you do have that idea and you're like, okay, this is what I want to make. And then the next question is like, okay, well, how do I want to make that? And then I think sometimes we make the mistake of being like, well, I've seen somebody make the post similar to mine, that they made it this way, so I'm just going to replicate that and hope that it succeeds. But to your point, the way that somebody tells a story is completely different than the next person. Like, I saw this one girl, she talked about her fitness journey, and she did it through a carousel, but she had like made illustrations on each of the photos. So as you swipe, it's like you're reading a book almost, and it has like her little illustrations on it, and like her telling her story and like her written word. And it was super different than I think like somebody else who I follow telling their fitness journey, and it's just them talking on the camera. Like, there's so many different ways that you can do it. It just has to be the way that you want to tell the story. And I think like the beauty of online and Instagram, and something I think about a lot, is just how creative people are. Like, there's so many different ways to tell the same story. And that's where like the beauty of being online comes from, is that they're all the right answers. There's no wrong answer, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Because like, we all take up information differently. So maybe for you, like the carousel with illustration would work great, but for another person, it's not really how they perceive information. So for them, it would be easier to just listen to somebody talk, and for them, it's going to be easier. But like for me, maybe that format doesn't work. I prefer something else. And like with however many styles of information, how we like to perceive, there will always be someone who can communicate the story just like we like it.
Yeah. I think it's also hard to compete, because I think inevitably, like, then my mind goes to, well, somebody's going to tell a story better than I will. But I think maybe that just comes down to practice.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of like the only person, like at the end of the day, the only person you're competing will be yourself, like couple of months, weeks, years before that. But I can definitely relate and understand this idea that it's so easy, especially with Instagram and just like entire social media world, to get hung up on an idea that we don't do enough, where somebody is winning and we're losing, because it's like, oh, I just made, I don't know, like $5,000 sale, but somebody else just did 500,000. Okay, so I suck, right? Because with how visible everything is, it's very easy for us to be like, well, it's unmeasurable compared to me, or it's like there is not even a point of trying because somebody else already does it. And like the best thing that we can do is to just push through it, because this feeling will pass, and it's not like we're going to be stuck in this feeling at all times. And if like it helps you or anyone, like what I typically do, like whenever I get into this motion, is to kind of try to turn into gratitude as much as possible, where it's like, okay, well, I didn't make enough money this month, but like, let's look at into another perspective. It's all about the narrative. It's all about the stories that we tell ourselves. Like, for example, in July, I had the lowest sale months ever since I quit my 9-to-5. Like, I was so stressed out. And then I kind of reminded myself that's like, okay, so I had just had a wisdom teeth surgery. I'm going to have my family visiting. We have like so much stuff. I enjoyed my summer. I worked like the least amount of time also that I worked for the past 2 years. And it's nice.
Yeah.
Like, I still made enough money to cover whatever it is that I need to cover. But like, I got to enjoy my summer. So like, I have like a proper summer holiday break. So it's fun, it's nice. And changing up this perspective into it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a race. It's not like we always need to be winning all the time. That there will be times where we're gonna be at the low. And I feel like during our lowest period, or our like slowest period, depending on what mood you're in, this is where the creativity kicks in.
Yeah.
And this is where it really is a place and time for us to strategize and to create. Because when we are at the busiest season, we will never go into like, oh, and now I'm going to spend 3 hours just strategizing and learning a new skill, because this will never happen. So reutilizing that slow period for us to create and for us to try something new, I feel like that's where the fun of being an entrepreneur kicks in as well.
Yeah. And I think it's also about like our goals. I think about when people get discouraged on social media because they're like, well, I don't have 1 million followers. And it's like, but maybe for your business, you don't need 1 million followers. Maybe you just need 100. And like, out of those 100, you get the one client who's going to be your big fish, And it's like, we need to decouple ourselves from these high level goals that we set fully based on comparison, and instead just go with the flow. Like, focus on the moment, focus on just like that one post at a time, make sure that it's fun and authentic, and it's like explaining your messaging well. And like that, I feel like could really never lead you astray. And that's what I think, at least from my perspective, like absolves the fear a little bit.
I couldn't have said it. It's like, you got it. And this kind of summarizes like the whole entrepreneurship and how we can build our own personal brand online when there is like so much noise and so much stuff happening at the same time, where you just gotta keep your eyes on the prize. That's it. That's the only thing that you can do.
Thank you so much, Daria. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.